Hey, Tommy.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
So today is mainly just you telling a story about something pretty significant that happened recently. And I haven't heard the story. I've heard little bits and pieces of it. So this will be the first time for me.
Right.
But I'm glad because this is a happy story. And
Yeah.
we all want a little bit of a true happy story. So
Well, I'm excited to be able to share this, and it is a kind of a next story that relates to our series on how to be happy, and the framing of happiness around receiving and giving, because it's Wheezy and I's real life experience of how that's worked out for us in a pretty amazing way. And so I do want to share it, but I also want to have a disclaimer at the front end that this is our story, and it's a story about giving and our giving. And it's a story in doing such that I feel a little bit awkward because it's really not about us and about our giving. And I don't think it's anything for us to be proud about and to elevate. So I feel a little bit awkward in telling our story of this. But to me, this is really about a much bigger story. So I hope that's what will be heard as I tell this.
I appreciate your disclaimer, but it's okay. I still want to hear it. And, in the last episode, we talked about all the different areas where people try to find happiness. And we talked a little bit about how we tend to go down these pathways of needing more comfort, wanting more achievement, having better experiences, or looking for happiness in relationships. And we talked about how we learn those pathways early on as pathways that help us get through life, and they're good things. But as we hear the story, I think all four of those categories are present, but in unexpected ways, really unexpected ways. So
it's very true.
You didn't, in the story of happiness, you were not asked to give up comfort, achievement, experiences, or relationships. You weren't even pursuing those, but along the way, each one of those things showed up in unexpected, surprising, and beautiful ways.
You're absolutely right. And I never thought about that, but that's so true in this. So let me frame this story. This is literally a 40 plus year story.
Okay.
But
it's only going to be a 15-minute podcast.
That's right. Yes.
So let's go.
I'm going to try to go quickly. So the framing of this is when Wheezy and I were married, one of the things that I was convinced about us doing, really almost from a duty obligation Christian type of perspective, was I believed that we were supposed to be givers. And we used the framework of tithing, which meant we were supposed to give the first 10% of everything. It was really easy when we were first married because, it was like $10,
Right.
It wasn't any kind of money. But I said, and Wheezy agreed. It said, okay, let's do this. So we just made a practice, a habit of giving 10% of everything we made, everything that came in, and, it didn't go very far, and we would, give it to whatever organization, church, or, a missionary, however it happened. And we really enjoyed doing that. So years went by, and we kept on with this practice, made a little bit more money, and then we, ran some businesses. So we had a few events that were a little bit bigger, and that 10% was more than we were prepared to give at a particular moment. So we stockpiled it. We put it in what's called a donor advised fund, gave it away. It isn't ours, but we stockpiled it until we could figure out what to do with it.
So you were hoarding money to give away. I love that.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm just joking. But okay, so you started off with this habit of setting aside 10% of your money to give away, and you give it to different organizations that you were interested in. And eventually you made you started making enough money that you didn't feel responsible necessarily giving it all away at the moment. So you had this idea, which is really smart, of saving it to perhaps give to something more significant in a
Right.
lump sum.
Yeah. And
Right.
if you do a donor advised fund, you are literally giving it away. It no longer belongs to you. It's just in a
You
separate
can't get it
bank.
back.
You can't
Right.
get it back.
Okay.
So we did that and we began to accumulate things. So then we go through the years that we've described in other podcasts when our daughter Perrin was diagnosed with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
6, 7 incredibly difficult years. And she eventually died in 2016. This giving happening on the side, we're continuing to do that. We're, in the middle of grief. And one of the things that we identified that we wanted to do is we wanted to build an orphanage in Perrin's name because Perrin loved children. So we thought to honor her, we wanted to do this. We'd had no idea how to go about doing this. So we become associated with Effective Ministries, Michael Thaler's ministry that does a lot in Niger, and he does things with orphanages and schools, and said, is there any opportunity? He said, well, not at the present time with orphanages, but there is with school. We're building a prototype school, Christian school in Niger, and there's an incredible opportunity to expand this school. It happened to match almost exactly the amount of money that we had accumulated, in this donor advised fund to give. And Perrin was an elementary education major. So we said, wow, this is so exciting. It was the biggest no-brainer decision for us. It was, this totally matches. This is what we've been waiting for all these years, this opportunity to do something significant with our giving. And so we gave the money for the building and the expanding of this school. Fast forward about a month or two as they're beginning to build this, they come back to us and they say, this is so fantastic. We actually want to rename the school in Niger the Perrin School. Blew us away. We
So you guys didn't ask for that. You
No,
just-
no,
yeah.
it didn't cross our
Sure.
minds. We just wanted to quietly kind of just do it. They came back, we want to rename this the Parent School. We were so excited about that. Fast forward a few more months, we decide to go over with the ministry to Niger, and it's when they're going to dedicate these new buildings for the Parent School. Unbelievable experience, far beyond our wildest expectation. Talk about experiences. It was just this unbelievable thing to go and see what was happening, what God was doing with these funds that we had no imagination of what would happen with it. So we get over there, and there's this dedication of the Parent School, and we have some amazing pictures of that. I could go on for a long time about what that experience was like. But then they come back to us and they say, you know what? We have just a little bit of money left over from this. And we think Perrin's story is such an amazing, inspiring story. We want to use her story and her name to build a network of parent schools throughout Niger, and to take this prototype school and have this be the vision for education in all of Niger. We're just completely blown away by this, at this point, that it's like the feeding of the 5,000. The loaves just keep on going further and further. It's just our simple couple loaves, and they keep on expanding. So we're thrilled beyond imagination. We go through the rest of the trip, seeing the different things that they're doing over in Niger. And then the last stop that we get to in Niger, they tell us this is going to be the next parent school. The people there at this school didn't know we were coming. People didn't know we were behind whatever giving it was. And we went to these 2 outdoor classrooms with about 30 or 40 students covering grades 1, 2, 3, and 4, with dirt floors, a tin roof, open to the exposure, and this incredible 2 classrooms. They said this Shalom School is going to be the next parent school, and we're going to be building buildings for these kids. And Weezy and I walked up to these outdoor classrooms, and dividing the 2 classrooms were 2 sheets of plywood, and written on the 2 pieces of plywood, they had no idea we were coming, in English. In Niger, everything's in French. In English were the phrases, "never give up." 2 different places. I've got pictures of it. That phrase is our family's motto. From when the kids were first born, it was like our thing. Never give up. Winston Churchill's never give up. I've got a plaque on my desk that the kids gave me. Never give up. It was the thing that defined us. It was our family motto. And we're over in the capital of Niger looking at 2 pieces of plywood, them not knowing we're there, them not knowing us. And in English, those words were written, "never give up." And it was like this it was almost like the heavens open, and God saying, "You know what? I am in this. I am in this giving, and this pleases me, and I have so much to do through this simple little giving that you do." And you talk about joy. It absolutely just broke us open when we saw that. And when we had that experience, it put a cap on what we had been learning for so many years. That is at the core of this series, is that happiness and joy are in giving. And we received so much incredible joy, so far beyond what our little stuff did in giving. And when we give, when we learn to give that way with receiving, because it was all based on what God had given us over the years, when we learn, it brings so much joy. And that's the joy that I so deeply desire for other people to experience. That's real joy. That's not fun. That's not just kind of a temporary little happiness of having a great experience. That's something that's so deep and so real and so lasting when we have that kind of joy in giving. And so we learned multiplied how much God has to do for us and in us through our acts of giving to others.
Wow. I mean, that's just such an amazing story. So it said, "never give up" on the walls, and they had no idea that was your family mantra.
No,
And it was in English.
no. They didn't know we were coming. They didn't know anything about us. They didn't know the people in the school, I don't think, knew that we were giving towards expanding the school. This was all totally behind the radar, a last minute thing to even go there. There was no way anybody could have known anything. And we asked the leader of it afterwards, and he had no idea. This was a complete surprise. Nobody else hardly even noticed the words on it. So it was just Weezy and I both walked up, and we saw it, and we looked at each other, and our jaws just dropped. We just went, "This can't be." So it was beyond description. It is truly what I would call a miracle. It was God saying, "I am here. I am in this."
So many things to just say about that. I mean, the one thought I have initially is that if you do believe in God, it must have been which I know you and Wheezy do, it must have just been a moment where you felt incredibly seen. Like there's no way that, just incredibly seen by God Almighty, to have such a personal affirmation and blessing, and even just an acknowledgement of all that you all have been through. I mean, 7 years of suffering, and that phrase, never give up. You know, a cynic could look at it and say, well, you had to give up because parent did die. But then there's this triumphant, never give up, living on of what she cared about, and her spirit of never giving up, and her care for orphanages and children who don't have enough. That is now giving in a way that isn't giving up, and it is ongoing.
Yeah. And I don't say this lightly. I couldn't say this lightly, because our suffering and parent suffering were beyond description for a long, long time. And there's nothing that will ever erase the grief and the loss that we experienced during that. But this was an experience where, in some very specific way, we sensed that God was redeeming our loss, that God had a big, good plan that he was doing through our loss. Not that God caused it in any way. It broke God's heart too, but that something really good was happening. Thousands of kids were being brought out of poverty. Thousands of kids were hearing about God. Thousands of kids were getting an extraordinary education through this. And it was God saying, you know what? I know you've suffered so much. I want you to know I'm there and I'm in this. And that was a powerful, powerful thing for us in the midst of and on the other end of these really hard years.
Yeah, and it doesn't at all make the suffering that you all went through less. It doesn't like rebalance the scales. It doesn't any of that. It's just more of a beautiful picture of, like you said, redeeming or beauty and joy in the midst of the suffering. And I even look at those 4 different categories that we talked about in the last episode of how we pursue happiness through comfort, achievement, experiences, and relationships, and how in this subtle twist, delightful twist, how you gave comfort to these children, how you achieved something great, not really in your name, but in Perrin's name, and not in a way that gets you ahead in life, but in a way that gets a community of people ahead in life. You and Wheezy both got to have this insane coincidence, divine moment, miracle experience, standing on the dirt floor, looking at a wall. And then the relationships that you're cultivating there, the opportunities that you have formed, even with this organization, and that I can't even imagine what that did for your relationship with Wheezy, how that having that shared experience, only you two can recognize the significance of it.
And I'll put a picture of the Never Give Up in the show notes. Maybe 1 or 2 others. So. And what I would hope, this was an amazing story for us to share, but what I hope people will be able to take from this is that however you choose to be a giver, whatever ways you choose to give, you will experience joy multiplied. God will take whatever you do and he will expand it beyond your wildest imagination. And that's what's so amazing about giving. And so I want to encourage people to be givers because there's so much joy to be had. And I believe there's so much good to be done because it's not just your giving, it's what God will do to multiply your giving as he did with ours. And so I want to encourage bold, joyful, cheerful giving for others because it's been an absolutely amazing experience for us.
Yeah, when you were telling the story, I just thought of how we settle for these small little not even happinesses, but just kind of like, it's almost like we just are grasping for these tiny things, like a little bit more comfort, a little bit more likes on Instagram, a little bit more achievement, when there's this enormous joy out there that you're describing this experience. And it reminds me of the image in the ancient Hebrew scriptures of my cup runneth over.
Yes.
At this idea of abundance and overflow, not a scarcity mentality, but there's abundance. Because there's abundance, we can give abundantly. And when we give abundantly, there's this satisfying overflowing of joy. So thanks for sharing that story.
Thanks.